The New York Fair Elections Campaign is applauding the proposed federal legislation for citizen-backed national elections. It is called the Government by the People Act, and it is much the same system of public financing that Governor Cuomo included in his budget proposal for New York State elections. Congressman Paul Tonko is a sponsor of the bill. He's joining me now from our D.C. Bureau to talk more about it. Congressman, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Liz. It's great to join you and your viewers.
Thank you. So, okay, this is, I think, a direct response to the Citizens United decision of a few years ago. I mean, ultimately, I think your side of the aisle believes that a constitutional amendment is really the way to go, but until you can get support for that, you're going this way instead?
Absolutely. You know, I think it was a very upsetting decision made by the highest court in the land, and many of us saw it as a undue influence on campaigns from PACs and special interests that really would ruin, I think, the quality of government that we should enjoy as Americans. And it's also a statement that it could transform us into the government of the money rather than the government of the many. So it was a very disturbing decision, and I think that the influence of special interests dollars in this process is one that needs to be addressed.
So how would the Government by the People Act address that? I mean, essentially you're creating a small dollar public matching system, sort of what exists in New York City, sort of what we've seen the governor include in his budget for congressional races.
Right. Well, there's a refund, a tax refund that of up to $25, and then there is a participation, a match that comes, 6-to-1 match that comes with contributions that are made, like at $150, and participation comes when the candidate can secure a minimum investment of small donors. I believe that's at a $50,000 threshold. So there's a lot of checks that have to be met here, but what it does is encourage investment from the general populace, so that smaller donations will be the name of the game, rather than these large, hefty PAC contributions that then encourage special interests to have special outcomes in our government. What this ought to be is the American public empowered here, so that their voice is all the stronger. And you know, Washington doesn't get it. They need to understand that the public needs to be strengthened in this process, and providing an incentive program like this and providing a matching funds outcome, I think, is the ticket that we need here.
Okay, so 2 points here. The first is you're really proposing to match the voice of big money, not to do away with the voice or drown out the voice. I mean, you can't really, constitutionally, you can't shut up big money.
And you can't, but...
And it doesn't address the independent expenditure piece, except for the fact that you're proposing to give candidates a bump at the end of additional public-backed funds so they can perhaps at least respond to the sort of surge of big advertising that comes as election days come near.
Well, basically what we have, too, is a commitment made by the candidate to not accept more than a $1,000 contribution from PAC, so that reduces significantly, and that is through the course, a cycle of an election campaign, a 2-year cycle for Congress, for instance, for the House. So that there are these caps that are placed on participation with other groups, and I think it eventually wears down, certainly wears down their impact, and eventually would take away the undue influence of these groups and provide a much stronger outcome for the general public that will either get a refund up to $25 or have those contributions that they matched at a 6-to-1 ratio.
But it doesn't stop independent expenditures by outside interests. Certainly, instead of putting money into campaigns, wouldn't this just encourage some big dollar donors to say, well, fine, we won't give directly to the candidate, instead we'll give to a super PAC or some such other entity?
Except that the super PACs won't be reached to, because you have to commit to capping yourself at a $1,000 contribution from a PAC, so that it really reduces the impact of those contributions into the campaign coffers of candidates.
Right, of candidates, but an independent entity could just spend on its own ads. It would sort of circumnavigate the candidate entirely.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but again, I think that with some other reforms there, where there's disclosure required of these special interests, of the independent campaign groups, that's another piece of the formula here for, again, bringing about awareness, disclosure, so that if these groups are going to exist, they will have to offer a disclaimer, so that we'll know if it's a negative force out there, if it's a polluting agent that is trying to promote someone as a green candidate, when in fact there are groups that are trying to circumvent anti-pollution laws. We would know that with disclosure that would be made just by the nature of this group and its source.
So my other question would be this. I mean, we already do have public funding for presidential campaigns, and it hasn't been going too terribly well. I mean, in 2008, I believe, there's a checkoff, right, a $3 checkoff that people can choose to contribute. In 2008, I think like 8% of the American public just contributed. People don't love the idea, or some people don't love the idea, of using their taxpayer dollars to fund the careers of elected officials.
Right. I think that there has to be a public awareness campaign, and I think that could be orchestrated. What we have here is a base list that's closer to the people as congressional candidates, certainly as House candidates, where you're in your congressional district in a multi-county region, perhaps in upstate New York, for the instance of the 20th district, you're in a 5-county region. You could conduct that public awareness, public education campaign, and people would be more inclined, I think, because they know candidates that would be putting their name up for an election, that they would be more inclined to network in the process. And I think also that there needs to be this awareness struck where the special interests are causing loopholes in our public policy, where they're not doing this without an agenda in mind, and where we can show these loopholes that need to be closed can then go toward the efforts to fund the efforts to match in the programs here with the grant dollars, and to again ignite within itself a flavor of acceptance, as they have in the state of Maine, where people really look to see which candidates are going to commit to that threshold, to operate by the rules of reducing the amount of PAC money you can receive, and how you reach out to the general public for the great percentage of your campaign activity. That has ignited, I think, in states like Maine, and so there are examples out there that have worked at the local level or the more regional level with the congressional campaign.
So I know, I mean, clearly, since you support this at the federal level, I would expect that you also support it at the state level. The governor has put a sort of matching contribution system into his budget, and I know that advocates are very hopeful that he will push hard for it. I mean, there's been a lot of talk that this is the time, because of the success of people like Bill de Blasio, the New York City mayor, or Elizabeth Warren, the Massachusetts senator, who talk a lot about the inequality gap in terms of income, and also sort of shutting down the power of big money. I mean, if in fact this doesn't work at the state level, that the governor, and we're talking about the state level here because I think the challenges at the federal level are probably a little bit higher, if it doesn't work, what kind of backlash might there be, do you believe?
Well, you never know. I mean, you put your concepts out there and you push for progressive reforms that will strengthen the system. And, there's that risk out there. But I think what basically is essential here is to take down that undue influence of these special interests, Wall Street, the banking industry, the insurance industry, the oil industry, those who have had super PACs that really create loopholes that don't allow us to engage in what ought to be transitional, transformational concepts in government. It holds back progress and really doesn't allow for, again, a government by the people, which is important. So it's of the people, by the people, for the people, as an outcome that you want to see here. And watching that undue influence that is so powerful is a reminder that it has to be turned around, especially in light of the case of Citizens United, which really put this whole issue on steroids, if you will.
What is the outlook, though, in Washington? I mean, the incentive for the Republicans who control the House to do this is what?
Well, it's a bipartisan package that was introduced today, and I know that they're going to continue to look to secure sponsors. I think there's about 128 sponsors at this point, and I think that certainly I think across America, the general populace is understanding that there is this special interest that's holding back and creating outcomes that really have flatlined middle-income community, the middle-income community of this country. You see the American dream risk for many, if not suffocated for far too many, because of the inequities that have been generated by the out of balance that we have. So I think, you know, there's a way to meet, I think, draw the interest of the people of this country toward a reform such as this, because they have seen it going stronger and stronger in the wrong direction.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it, Congressman. I do thank you for your time, as always.
My pleasure, and thank you, Liz. It's always a pleasure to join.